Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Redefining Society podcast. In particular, the one where we wonder if we are silicon, carbon, or cell. I don't know. Can we actually ask that question, Bruce?
Yeah, well, one of these days, that's probably going to be the first question you ask people, right?
What are you?
You meet on a date or you're a job interview. So I just want to clarify, are you silicon or are you made of cells or carbon-based or some combination of those? Someday
Or we should include in the future, you're completely digital, like a digital twin, an avatar, an hologram, which doesn't make you, I guess, nor silicon, nor carbon, nor a cell.
Yeah, you can say, this is my significant other. He or she's completely digital, but, you know.
Aren't people marrying already? I think I heard in South Korea or Japan, they're marrying their virtual assistant, artificial intelligence. I don't know if it's legal or not, or how you open a bank account with that, but I heard it's crossing the line there.
Well, technology, so.
Yep, technology. A lot of fun. There was that movie, Her, I think we mentioned a few times before, where the protagonist fall in love with an AI. And
yep.
So
I've actually also written for Forbes about some of this stuff. So there's this, there's an annual sex robot convention where they talk about those things and, how people are kind of building more and more realistic robots. And so you can use your imagination on how those things may be used. But they're becoming more and more realistic. And there's a whole community that has these conventions where they talk about the different developments and, technologies that are right around the corner. So things are changing.
On the other hand, I read an article where social life, it's one of the secret for longevity and happy life. Mm-hmm. So I don't know, does robot and AI qualify as social life, or is actually making us even more and more lonely, or pretending to be in a relationship where I guess you're always right. I've tried to argue with the ChatGPT, but always tell me, I'm sorry, Marco. Yeah, I didn't think about that, or I made a mistake. And I'm like, come on, just go for it.
So you're winning the arguments with ChatGPT. That's good.
Well, when I ask 3 times the same thing and I don't get a good result, I get a little Italian on that, right?
Uh-huh.
I'm like, come on, are you listening?
Do you bring it up things in the past, like in a regular argument with people? How in a regular argument with people, you'll say, well, 3 years ago you did such and such, or blah, blah, blah. You can do that with ChatGPT. Well, 3 days ago you said such and such. Do you still feel that way? So
yeah, well, I guess you need an artificial intelligence assistant that actually keep tracks, because in ChatGPT, when you start a new conversation, it doesn't connect with the one before. You need to keep that one going. But I'm pretty sure that there is going to be, or maybe there is already, a virtual assistant that it actually does keep track of everything. And then you go back and like, yeah, I remember what you did 3 years ago.
Yeah, I remember you left the toilet seat up 2 weeks ago. So don't ask me any more questions about this, or something like that sort. Yeah.
Probably. Oh my God, the future is really, really changing and getting interesting. And we laugh, but there is a lot to think about in many, many aspects. And that's what we do. I mean, we just came here in this wonderful empty bar once again, Bruce. Still beautiful, still empty. We got to do something about that. Maybe we ask ChatGPT how we can market.
Yes, get people to come to the bar. It makes me feel a little self-conscious. Maybe it's me.
You know what? Send me the background. Next time we do this, I'm going to put the same bar. Maybe I mirror the background and we just pretend to be in the same.
Or we will look like we're in 2 different bars at the same franchise, right?
Yeah. Or maybe one day we'll get together for real and and have a podcast. We got together for real in the past, but we didn't record. Although it could have been a very nice location for a podcast to record. But we didn't do it. So here we are in this bar and my office. And I know you have a couple of things coming up by the time people listen to this. One of these may have already happened, which doesn't mean that we cannot put a link to that because we can travel in time, I guess. It's one thing we're able to do, and one that is probably about to happen. And I found them both interesting. They could be an individual episode, no matter what, but why not just jam it into our 30 minutes conversation? So,
Okay.
what you're up to?
Yeah, so January 30th, we're going to be having a workshop on basically looking at farming and agricultural technologies and what's being developed right now, what will be developed in the future, and how these technologies, can potentially help people better fulfill nutrition requirements and dietary guidelines. And we felt that, and so this is a National Academies of Science, Engineering, Medicine event. I'm a chair of a committee, the committee that's putting on this event. And sort of the genesis for this came from, one of the sponsors of our committee, the USDA, United States Department of Agriculture. And they were very interested in saying, and looking at, what are these different types of technologies and how can they actually ultimately help nutrition and health? And it's important for several reasons. So one is, first of all, there's a lot of misinformation and disinformation out there about like agriculture and farming technologies. And so you'll see things that are accurate versus completely not accurate. But also, we're facing a lot of increasing challenges when it comes to, how to better fulfill nutritional requirements and how, what's happening to food sources. So on the one hand, with food sources, you've got things like, there's been a lot of over farming. So a lot of we're having less and less soil that's tillable, or the soil may have fewer nutrients, or you're running out of land to actually plant different types of crops, or things like, running out of food supply in oceans and lakes and places like that. Or you're also having climate change, which is affecting all these types of harvests and yields and those things like that. And at the same time, the population keeps growing, right? I mean, we don't have the same population that we had 20 years ago. There's a lot more people on Earth, and population requirements are changing. And then, you see all these different things like allergies. People, the rates of allergies have been changing over years. So a lot of interesting challenges. Plus, you get some type of food item like a tomato or something like that. A tomato is not equal to another tomato, which is not equal to another tomato, right? If you eat a tomato, that tomato may have more or less nutrients depending on how it was grown, how long it remained in storage, how long it's been out there. So just because someone says you should eat a tomato or eat whatever doesn't mean you're getting the same stuff. So there's all these different types of challenges that are out there. And, we talk about technology. This is a situation where technology can really help. So we're going to bring together many different experts, probably around a dozen experts in this area that are developing different types of technologies, and they're going to discuss what they're doing and also what the future looks like. So it should be exciting.
Yeah, it's I guess it's not more potato, tomato. You actually have.
Nope.
There is a difference.
Yep.
and that makes sense. That's why I guess we go back to organic or biologic. We call it in Europe, biologique. We got the French term for that. And I don't care. I mean, what people may think, but you can taste the difference. And at one point of what you said, talking about the past, Again, I'm going to bring my Italian knowledge here, but one of the best tomatoes are coming from the Naples area, as well as other kind of fruit. And one of the reasons is because the volcanic soil from Mount Vesuvio. And so that happened, I believe, in other places where there are volcanoes and where you have a climate, of course, that you can grow that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
And I'm wondering how technology it can help improve the quality where the weather and the location maybe is not. So I keep thinking of hydroponic farms.
Hmm.
Is that something that you guys are gonna probably talk about? Like
Yeah.
create artificial climate to actually do these things in the right way?
Yeah. So if you think about technologies, you can be divided into different types of categories. So one is, how do you actually change the quote unquote growing environment? And when we talk about growing, it can be like ranging from plants to fish or what have you. So how do you actually change that environment? Either because the environment is changing over time, so you don't have the same environment that we had in the 1950s or 1940s, or the there's new ways to do things that can actually increase the yield, increase the possibilities. So one certainly is like what's happening around the food product that you're trying to grow, but then there's also technologies that can affect the food product itself, ranging from potential, different types of breeding, different types of genetic engineering. I know many people will react a certain way if they hear the term genetic engineering, but there are techniques out there that could be helpful, or some people might say, well, we don't want to see that, but it's important to talk about what the different possibilities are. So so different types of technologies, or even things like different types of technologies that can do things like monitor growth or help just facilitating harvesting. So there's all these different types of things.
Yeah, interesting enough, by the time we have this conversation live, it would have been already live. But I talked yesterday with the Undersecretary of the Department of Homeland Security, Dr. Dmitry Krusnov, and he was at CES, and we were talking about all the different things that the Department of Health, his department is looking at, and it's from FEMA to emergency to anyway infrastructure, anything that regards also all this kind of technology. And we end up talking about how, like a company like John Deere for tractors, they're not really a machine company anymore. They're a technology company. They can look at the soil nowadays, not only because they're autonomous, but they have so much technology they can see if the soil is more fertile in a place or another.
Mm-hmm.
If it's less, they're going to drop double the quantity of seeds, and then they got laser to zap the bad weed and and monitor the growth. And so I don't know, people, I guess you're right, genetic modification, it's a bad news because now we've seen non-GMO, so people may associate that, but I think there is good genetic and modification and bad genetic modification. So I guess
So
we need to be open to that.
You raise some additional uses of technology, like the actual growing strategy and all those different types of things. And I think, there can be a tendency when people think of, a farmer or fisher person, you think of kind of the old image, someone with a pole, or someone just kind of standing, with a shovel or a hoe or something like that, or a rake. But these things are getting a lot more sophisticated over the years. So there could be a lot of technology. These are large operations that include a lot of technology already, and these things are only going to get more complicated in the future.
Yeah. And I think another thing that we can talk about this is, so I have one comment again. I remember my grandfather grew up in the farm, in Italy back in the 40s. And he used to say all the time that in Italian it rhymes. So I'm not going to say it in Italian, but in English it means that the farmers are big boots, but a very thin, sharp brain, which means that, you're working the land, but you need to know so many things. It's still a science. You need to know the season. You need to know how to treat diseases. You need to know what to do if something happened. I mean, it's always been a science to know the season of
Yep.
doing something, cropping and nexting, changing things in the fruit itself. So it's not surprising. That's what I'm about to say, that that science and technology can do so much for this. And on the other hand, it's important, I think, and I had a conversation this with the vice president of the Fresh Produce Association, and my question was: is this going to make the bigger company bigger and the smaller company smaller because they are the only one that can develop this kind of technology? And our point was that either through a consortium, through communities, or through development of technology that you can have on your phone, just like by scanning something, know what kind of disease that leaves has, that olive tree or whatever it is, it actually going to benefit the small grower as well.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely welcoming technology and all of this. And it sounds like a fantastic conversation or a panel to be on.
Yeah, you can think of it. I mean, there's examples of industries that have been transformed different ways by technology. So, for instance, it used to be if you wanted to produce a movie, you had to go get a big studio and all these things, get all the special effects and those things like that. But now with the software, with things like YouTube or what have you, you have people producing things which are would have been considered very good quality 20, 30 years ago. Like they can look studio quality, but you have individuals doing this, or maybe very small groups.
Yep.
So the argument for technology in those areas, it's helped democratize a lot of entertainment so that you're not heavily dependent on just big studios for everything. So that's an example of a positive. So yeah, it's not necessarily there. I've seen that before where people say, well, okay, if this requires all these technologies, then only the big dogs can do it. But that's not necessarily the case. It all depends. It can really actually facilitate individuals or individual groups. And like you said, you can have networks where people are connected to then help each other do things. So lots of possibilities.
Yeah, and usually the market goes in a way where, yes, at the beginning, maybe only the big dogs, the big corporation can invest in doing research and development. And maybe, yes, they have the heads up that come in the entertainment industry. I mean, you couldn't do CGI on your home computer. You needed huge computer to do back in the days. But now you can run this program in the cloud throughout your phone and be totally fine with that. So maybe there is that first stage, but then it does trickle down. AI, it's a good example of that. With $30 a month, you can get the best ChatGPT that you have. Yep. So yeah, really good point. I love to know, and maybe we can even figure out if we can organize a panel from that panel in the future where maybe you invite a couple of people and we have this chat. That would be really good. But I know you have another good one coming up, which is kind of related.
Yeah, yep. I also want to add, the other thing is technology can help connect like food sources, farming, agriculture to the individual consumer too in many different ways. Like I mentioned that it's difficult to, many people may find it difficult to fulfill nutritional guidelines or dietary guidelines, nutritional requirements. You look at these different types of things, and then you say, okay, but socially and culturally, I've got to eat hot dogs or something like that, and like that obviously doesn't fit in there. Or say you are, making a fruit cake or something like that, and you want to say, okay, I'm putting all these components in there, but like, how does this actually connect with me getting enough nutrients? So you can have technology helping you understand, okay, based on the food sourcing, based on where the food comes from, this is what the results will be in terms of your health and nutrition, and what's the difference does it make to get this type of farming versus that type of farming. So there's that connection as well. So again, something to keep in mind, because there can be a tendency to think, oh, well, this is technology that just helps things upstream, and then I'm not even going to think about it. I'm just going to eat whatever comes close to my mouth. But this is a way of sort of connecting people with this food source, because it used to be, right? It used to be not super long ago, you would eat what you would pick, right? You would say,
Yeah.
I'm hungry. I'm going to go to that tree and pick something, or I'm going to grow this and I'm going to eat it. Like we tend to think, well, that was a long time, but that wasn't too long ago, 100 years, 200 years. So then you knew what exactly you're like, okay, I need to eat this, and this is where this comes from. But now, you have that separation, that disconnect. In fact, I've seen studies or interviews where you ask people like, where do French fries come from? And then people don't know that, oh, that actually came from the ground before.
From France.
Oh, exactly. Yes. From France and Fryland, right? So, or Freiburg, right? It probably came from Freiburg. But so people don't really know that. So connecting people with the food sources closer is another thing.
Yeah, which again connect to what you're about to talk, which is more like science communication. But
yes,
that fourth, what they call the fourth industrial revolution now, it's about not the technology on its own. That was more like maybe the third, but the connection of different technology that work together, which also brings to connect probably the consumer and be more proactive towards this. Because if you can have something, even your own fridge, that tells you that I'm going to scan all the food that you have in here and you get a grade of F minus because it's really all bad for you or for your, I don't know, medical condition that you have. How about we do a better assortment? And then you connect the entire, blockchain and analysis of food and food farmers, and to decide how to optimize also what to deliver in certain areas. So, there is an whole network that technology can help, and it is changing the way we do things. Problem is, a lot of people don't know.
Mm-hmm.
We need to tell them.
Yep.
How?
Yep.
Do people even care?
Communication is important.
Which brings us to
which is perfect segue
to
since we don't have kind of dramatic shifting music.
I could add it.
You have in the Avengers when suddenly like Thanos showed. Well, okay, I don't want to apply it.
Yeah.
Just shift to Thanos, but like when the hero comes in, so the hero lands. You have the music and then there's a shift in mood and things like that. Mm-hmm. So we don't have the background music just yet, but
no, we will.
This is where we would put it. Yeah. So yes, so science communications is something that's super important. It's become increasingly important, I'd say, over the past decade or so, because there's so much misinformation out there and so much disinformation. And then you've seen it many times, studies which have shown that, kind of knowledge of different types of science has been going down, or like you've probably seen some of those late night talk show segments where they go out onto the street and they ask people basic questions. And
that's scary.
Yeah, people don't know. And I think it's just because in big parts people have not been exposed to a lot of these different things.
No.
Because you can ask someone some science questions they may not know, but you ask them like, name all the Avengers and all their powers and stuff like that, or tell me everything about Taylor Swift or something like that, and then like it all comes out. So it's not like people don't have the capacity to know different things. It's just that they haven't been exposed to these things. So just imagine if people were to put in as much time or have as much exposure to different science things as what Tony Stark and Iron Man is doing, that can have a huge positive impact in our society, right? And science it's fun. So I think one of the key things is we need to talk about how you can transform science communications, because it's not. I was talking to someone the other day who this person admitted, so wasn't a fan of science, in high school and college and kind of viewed it as, just something. It's like medicine, right? You got to take medicine. I'm going to learn this stuff. But it doesn't have to be that way, right? It can be interesting and engaging. So, so I'm going to, January 21st, I'm going to have a Q&A, question and answer discussion with, drumroll please, Dr. Francis Collins, who he was the longest standing director of the National Institutes of Health, NIH. So he crossed 4 different presidential administrations, which is
talking
incredible.
About survival.
Oh yeah. You're talking about like he was there through different parties and et cetera. So he has seen and knows a lot. And prior to that, he was central to the Human Genome Project. So he was a very accomplished scientist even before becoming director of NIH, and then was director of NIH for many years. And he knows a lot about, obviously, science, and knows a lot about science communication, is very interested in science communication. I think he recognizes the importance of it. So this is an opportunity for people to join and ask questions. I'll be moderating, from someone who really has a quite a unique perspective and eye on science communications and what's needed.
Yeah, and what's amazing, and I think the opportunity here is that apart that the fact that he was probably involved in all of this before becoming, working for 4 different presidents. So if you take that, all those 4 plus 4 plus 4 presidential years, and you get his experience, you're talking about probably somebody that made the transition from before social media to fake news to manipulation for whatever political reason of information. And I think, just even from that aspect, it can bring a lot of stories. But you said something that made me think at the personal level too. Like I've always said, I'm always been more a humanistic guy. I always like more literature. I always like more philosophy, which end up to be kind of my career, sociology and all of that. And I can't understand math. When I look back, I had great teacher in the subject that I like, and I have really crappy one in the one that I don't like. Meaning, they didn't excite me. Right? It's, like you say, it's that medicine that you need to take, but it doesn't have to be like that. B, it's actually not like that because there are very exciting science communicator, which is not even a profession on its own. It's actually being a teacher. You are communicating science to whatever grade you're teaching. And it can make the difference between transmitting that passion for a future career versus, hell no, I'm not going to be an engineer because it's just not good. I mean, I think example of astronauts that come back, physicists that are well known, Carl Sagan, deGrasse Tyson, just to mention a few, that they're fun. They're telling you a good story. They make it understandable. And all of a sudden you're like, hey, let me learn more about what they just said versus, a completely different, science, dogs, whatever, barking thing.
The dog is trying to communicate. So
and it's not making any sense. And
no,
the mailman is not liking it.
He might be trying to make a major important point, but what he's not doing, he's not putting it in the right sort of context, right? So maybe he might be saying something and you're like, well, that's not the right context. So,
but you got my point. So while I wait for my dog to shut up, your point of making things exciting.
Yeah. Well, I think the thing is, I've heard many times from, so I do, a lot of AI work, a lot of mathematical kind of modeling type of work. And many times we'll have people who will say, oh, well, I'm not a math person, but I'm interested in learning more about this. And I've had situations where people actually have taken to it like, a fish to water, ultimately. and they actually have very good math capabilities, but they majored in something else. They majored in humanities or something like that, because for the reason that you indicated, Marco, where when it was originally posed to them, when math was originally posed to them, it was posed in a very dry way. No one explained why this is useful from a day-to-day perspective, right? So it's like, here's the formula. Just memorize this formula or just know how to use this formula. And you're like, well, why? What's not really fully explained is that math describes everything, right? If you look at like all these phenomenon or behaviors, they follow mathematical equations. The way people respond to things, the way, the wind works, the way the shapes of things. You notice that, there's certain shapes that always appear and there's some shapes that never appear because it's governed by many times mathematical formulas. There's something in the creation of all these things are following mathematical formula. So it's a way of describing the universe and describing our world. And if you pose it that way, then suddenly it becomes a lot more interesting, right? Because it's more relevant. And I think we can do that a lot with science. I think there can be the assumption that science is either something like medicine or something is that should be told by one person to another to say, this is the way it is. Whereas instead, like I think everyone has the capability or capacity of sort of understanding a lot of these principles, but let's make it more fun. Let's make it more interesting. That's one of the reasons why I try to, when I write things for like Forbes and cover science and health, I try to make it a little more fun. And, not like serious all the time, not like, the world is exploding type of, news. It's more like, this is the amusing parts of it.
Yeah. That's the thing is when they tell you what, this is just the way it is. I just need to memorize. I remember in college, my first exam was history. And I am just not good in just memorizing things, right? Dates, name. But I'm good in understanding why things happen, the concept, the contextual thing. And that just came down to that. Like a professor that was telling me that story is made of dates and name and places, and I completely disagree with that. That was my initial, first exam in college, and it was actually the worst exam I've ever took. And then I got a little lucky because for me it was like, well, I understand why, I don't know, the War of the Roses started between France and England, and I don't remember all the kings and queens and general and the perfect day. So, but the thing of why, like asking why, like okay, I understand you tell me that word, but why? You kind of want to touch to your own experience. So if you can translate that, why this happened, then it has a completely different meaning, and the way you communicate this, it makes a complete difference. I think that it comes down to say, can you explain it to a 5-year-old kid? I don't know, quantum physics, for example.
Yep.
I can't, but I'm sure that if you really understand it, you can. Maybe not in depth, but you may create a new quantum physicist, somebody that wants to be a quantum physicist, just because you kind of gave a better answer than, well, that's just the way it is. Well, that's not going to help me. So,
Yep.
Are we doing, in your opinion, enough? Well, my opinion, no, to make science, medicine, any kind of science really more appealing, more understandable, instead of keeping that shaman attitude of, I retain all the secret. You need to come to me, and I can, move some, burn charcoal and tell you what the future is going to be. Is it our fault a little bit? Is it scientists' fault a little bit?
Yeah, I think we have a ways to go, and I think in some ways things have gone the opposite direction over the past couple decades because a lot of these scientific disciplines have becoming increasingly siloed. Like you have someone who specializes in this one little thing, and then they come up with their own language so that then even like another scientist can't even understand what they're talking about.
Acronyms. So, I hate acronyms. I can't take that.
Oh, I remember I was in a meeting once where basically the entire meeting, it was a meeting of different people of different disciplines, and they all came together, and the entire meeting was spent arguing about what is meant by the word tool, TOOL, because tool means different things in different disciplines. So like this went on, and I had no horse in the race. So I was just kind of observing this. And, like someone saying tool means this, tool means that. And they were just arguing about it. And I'm thinking, I can think of another definition of the word tool that applies to this situation. But I think it's gotten worse in that sense. Everything has become siloed. And, but there's a lot we can do. Like, for instance, I was part of this National Academy's program where I would meet with screenwriters and directors and give advice in terms of how to make the scripts more scientifically accurate. And they welcomed that. They were like, yeah, why not? Why not make it more accurate if you're going to show something in the movies? So
that's cool. I actually, who told me that does quite a bit of this is Neil Cummings. Our friends from the Mentor Project. He does a lot of consulting. He's an astrophysicist, and he does a lot of consulting in this because people actually now they do that. It's not just sci-fi. I remember when I was a kid, I would never wonder if why can an X-wing fly with that kind of structure in space, or I don't care. I think it was just cool. But now I see more and more when there is a sci-fi new show. They go into how accurate is it? Could it really happen? Can you hear noise in space?
Yep.
No, but we do put it just for the drum roll special effect, right? But it's cool to know that, yeah, this is possible, not possible. Doesn't mean you can still enjoy it. It's still fantasy. But a lot of sci-fi, it's actually based on possibilities. Maybe not real now, but if I remember, our smartphone now are pretty much what Star Trek used to use. So there you have it.
Oh, lots of things that appeared in Star Trek are the kind of the basis of inventions
Our life.
that we have now. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Still waiting for the transporter though. So.
And the time machine, which by the way, I was actually listening to the other English really good communicator. I think his name is Brian Cox. He's another astrophysicist. I mentioned him a few times because he's a really cool dude. And there was a little clip on Instagram that they asked him if space travel is possible. And he said, yes, but only in the future. You cannot go back, but you can fly as fast, almost like 9.999% of the speed of light. When you come back, you will be in the future because you will be so much younger, and maybe hundreds of thousands of years or 100 years have passed by, depending on how long you stay away traveling at that speed. You can come back and see the future, and you're still you. So that's kind of like a time machine. Maybe not the Doctor Who that we know, but and again, that's a cool example. I want to know more. Why does he know this thing? What's the speed of light? What like it can trigger so many more things that just say, the formula of it.
Absolutely.
So I guess we need advertisers and creative people working in science and help making some really cool stories. There you go.
Yep.
Well, this was fun. I really enjoyed these two completely different topic, but also somehow related one to another, because as they all are, as we are related from being a cell, carbon and silicon, because at this point we're just all in the same blender. And that's just life it is nowadays. So very cool, Bruce. Good to see you. Say hi to everybody in that bar. That should be pretty quick.
Yes.
It should be just a quick wave of your hands.
If there's no one.
And and I'm looking forward for our next conversation recorded. I know there'll be many other in between, but recorded. It's about once a month. And next time you'll tell me how both these events went. I'm very curious.
Absolutely.
All right, everybody stay tuned. Once a month we get together in this bar where a lot of weird characters walks in. It's kind of like in Star Wars. And we play some jazz. Maybe next time. Take care, everybody.
Bye, everyone.